Being from where?
from a village when they came over
Oh,
at that time. which
Really?
was like, I think it was like 19.
All right, my friends, everyone's microphone's on. Hi, Jane.
Hi.
yeah, because.
Do you have another one of these? by
No, we
any
can
chance?
share.
So we're sharing?
Absolutely.
I've been given instructions to make sure we all speak into our mics.
For posterity.
If you guys could tip your mics down just a
probably a
bit
pure
towards you.
accident.
Thank you so much.
I feel like I'm on those hearings
Yeah.
that I've been looking at.
Oh, no, no, this is a friendly thing.
Yes, it is.
No, I just noticed that they weren't.
That there's a mic in front of you now and that you're being recorded.
Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you.
Does anyone need agenda, minutes, some of the materials I sent out?
Thank you, David, for sending.
I don't know what I did, but I guess
Indeed.
One?
I didn't print my minutes, but I have them.
Here. Oh, jolly good.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Great to see you, as always.
Welcome.
For the record, again, I will say that our chairperson is out of town, so I'll just kind of act in her stead. So I guess the first thing is, did anyone have a chance to look at the minutes from our last meeting? Thank you, Kathleen. Those were great.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
if so,
Yes.
would someone like to,
I make a motion, we accept the minutes.
thank you.
I'll second it.
Favor? Okay, wonderful. They are accepted. So, a couple of things I'd like to share to get us started. In your packet, at the very back, there's this very simple kind of profit and loss spreadsheet that just shows, in real simple terms, each show, the expenses for that show, and the revenue for that show, and what the net was, whether it was rental or an opera house production. And the one that you have actually goes back to last year, just for the sake of comparison. And so right now, we're near the end of our calendar year, and we only have a few things left. Lunasa, which is a big show, and the Ashwood School, which is a not so big a show, still wonderful. And the good news is we are in pretty good shape. Our rental net is almost $15,000, and that's not counting Lunasa, which should be a good show. Our Opera House net is $9,000, and our expenditures from the Community Arts Fund is $237.90, which is actually quite good because a lot of the other expenses have been offset by donations and so forth. So I think we are in pretty good shape and living up to our mission, which is to do good work and not lose money. So there's that. Recent shows, we've had a couple since we last talked. We had They Shall Not Grow Old, the film that we showed on Veterans Day, and that I think got a really good response. Very
Sorry, I missed that.
powerful film. And I sort of asked around, hoping people would say what I wanted them to say. And I said, would you be interested, would you come see it again next year? Would you think it would be a good idea to make this kind of an event to honor Armistice Day and Veterans Day? And everybody said, oh yeah, they would. So that's what we're going to do.
You own that now?
We do.
Oh, great.
If, I have a question, did you find out if the second piece is on that DVD?
It is not. It does not have the Q&A. It's just a straight,
Wow.
just the
I wonder why
documentary.
they don't have that on there. We need to find that, because it really brings it all together. It'd be a good piece. We should be able to find it by.
I'm sure we could. Yeah, we just bought it online. We do pay licensing for those, but at this point, it's almost simpler to just like order it online than to go through having the distributor ship it out and then ship it back. And this way, we thought, we can. It'd be good to have in our library. Hi, Rosanna. Welcome.
Yes.
And we had David Mallet concert with Caroline Cotter, and that was really great. Well attended, wonderful show. And it led to something interesting, which I will tell you about a little later in the agenda, concerning Caroline Cotter, the opening act. But that was a good show. Then we had Diado at the Blue Cafe, which was sold out. It was packed, which is, I don't know, like the third time this has happened. So it's kind of a good problem. They were wonderful. A touring kind of contemporary folk duo. And Lunasa is this Saturday. So this is traditionally a big show for us, and Lunasa has been here, I want to say this could be certainly their fifth time.
Wow.
And over time, they've really built up a pretty loyal audience, and they're just a lot of fun, and they're really good. And last year it sold out, and it was just such a fun night.
But David, is it Celtic?
It is. They are an Irish instrumental band.
Right. And is it in the main body of the kirk? That is just. There's a Scottish one.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
In the Opera House.
Yes.
No, I thought it
Oh,
was,
yeah,
but
no,
I thought I'd
because
better just make sure.
we sold out last year.
How many tickets did David Mallet sell?
David Mallet, I don't have this in front of me, but he's, I don't know, 350 or so.
Oh, good, okay. Just wanted
It was
to-
a- it was a
because
solid
made-
night.
Made nice money.
Yeah. Last time he was here, which was in 2015, he sold 150 tickets or something. So this was, which was a little surprising.
That is surprising.
Peter Niels opened for him, and it was a Will Niels production, I believe. And I don't know,
Maybe it
you
just
would have
didn't-
thought it would have done better, but that was our records from that. But this one did really well, and he was wonderful.
And how are tickets selling for Lunasa this time?
We are now at 370.
Okay. And it's general admission, right?
Correct.
Okay.
It was funny because I'm prone to being nervous, and I was thinking, it's the sales really aren't going that well. It doesn't feel that robust. And then I pulled out the numbers from last year, and it turns out it's exactly on track. It's exactly the same. We're at the same point, 4 days out as we were then. So it's like, it's going to be fine.
People like to just think they can walk right up and buy tickets here.
And they can.
And they do. And they do.
We'll take them. A couple other quick building notes. There's a couple of projects going on. The most exciting and urgent is the third floor bathroom, which we're super excited to be doing that. So we put it out to bid. Our timing is not great, holidays and so forth, but we're working on it. We have had 5 different contractors come and inspect and walk through.
Wow.
Bids are due this week, and then we'll know. And then as soon as we have a contractor, we will start scheduling them and really kind of hit the ground running. Just as a recap, particularly for those of you who can picture this space, there's a small bathroom and a slightly larger storeroom, and that footprint is going to be changed into a unisex, accessible bathroom and a smaller storeroom with catering sinks. So a little less storage, but counter space, cupboards, sinks, deep sinks. And then it'll be a proper bathroom with changing table and all that business. And
Still one at a time?
Correct.
Will we have a green room or a place to set up artists for Blue Cafe?
Yep, it'll just be a little smaller. So our big grand reopening is going to be the February Blue Cafe, which is on Valentine's Day, because nothing says romance like a new bathroom. The band is called Cold Chocolate. They're this really interesting duo from Boston. One guy plays guitar and sings, and the other guy plays a very small drum kit and sings. And they're kind of funky and swampy and cool. So that's that. So third floor, that's that project. We're also trying to move ahead on the project of repairing the building, which is spurred on by sort of water leaks we've had. That's a fairly big project. We're looking at new gutters or addressing the gutters, which run around 3 sides of the building. There are windows on the Washington Street side towards the back that are original wooden windows that were never replaced in the bigger project, probably because they're not in a public space. But those need to be addressed, and some masonry work. So we're in the process of working on that. Met with a contractor this week who I think is going to do good work. They specialize in historic buildings, and so that's encouraging. And lastly, the town,
Can I say one thing about that? And one of the reasons for that is this building is a huge energy drain, and this will be also a huge building the building up so that the energy will be much more efficient.
well, actually, not so much that, but the third thing I was going to say is we're doing an energy audit.
Oh, I thought there was.
Yeah, no, this is more in the sort of repair of the envelope.
Oh, okay.
side. I mean, it'll certainly help.
I thought it was a combined.
Can't hurt.
It can't hurt, yeah, but
I spoke out of turn.
no, you just teed me up in a nice way. Mark's totally right. There is desire from the leadership of the town to do an energy audit, which will look at not only the outside, but everything from electricity usage and HVAC and just a host of things, which will undoubtedly save us some money and make the building more efficient. So those are the 3 things that are building-wise sort of happening. So that's it for manager's notes. Next thing on the agenda is the literary salon. Do you want to, is there any update to be shared? Or?
The only update is I have been in touch with a couple of people on the board of the Friends of the Malay House about potentially doing,
Great.
maybe people, maybe poets reading Malay's work and their own work, that kind of thing. And they're interested, and we're going to keep working on that, but just opened up communications with them.
That's cool. I know it's early, but in your mind, do you see this as being sort of linked to the Malay Festival or sort of a breakout satellite of that, or?
I would say not. I don't think we would want to do it as part of the festival because it's such a small space, and the festival events drew pretty big crowds.
Yeah.
So we have to keep in mind that we don't want this to be too big a thing or too
Well, we'll have to
popular.
rethink it.
Yeah. Because it's meant to be a small thing. So, yeah. So I'm thinking outside of the festival, but obviously tied
Yeah.
to
Well, that's
the
kind of neat. I
festival
mean,
in
that's
some way.
not so different from like, there's the SIF Festival and then there's SIF Selects.
Yeah,
It's
or
sort
like the
of a
Camden
reminder.
Conference does events preceding and, so I'm thinking of it kind of like that, but
That's great.
I've just opened communications with them and they seem
Cool.
into it, so, but we haven't talked about what we might do exactly or even when, so.
Well, the nice thing is, to me, it's a fairly nimble event. I mean, we can sort of place it depending on when the need arises, so
Yep.
that's great.
So I've gotten that far, and I invited them to come to the January 12th event so they can see the space and think about what might work well in it.
That's great.
So go from there.
Thank you for doing that. I think it's going to be a neat addition to the menu of things.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about January 12th?
I've talked about it before, but I will certainly talk about it again. January 12th, which will be the inaugural literary salon in the Tucker Room, is the space we're talking about. I and another poet, Paul Corrigan from Millinocket, and 2 musicians, a cellist and a violinist, Susan Ramsey and Ruth Fogg. We have a program where Paul and I read a poem on a similar theme, and then they play a song, and we read a set of poems, and they play a song, and we have it sort of choreographed thematically and stylistically as well as one can figure that out.
They don't play in the back room? They play
No, they
separate-
play between.
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah,
yep,
okay.
yep. And they know what we're reading, so they've picked songs that kind of work with what we're reading, mood-wise and
Nice.
thematically wise, So we've done one in, one of these in Dover Foxcroft and one in Dexter, and so now we're bringing it to the coast.
Side note, Susan Ramsey was in David Mallett's band, and she was wonderful.
Yeah, she plays with him frequently. So,
Yeah, and she was excited about it. She said, "Can I see the space?" I said, "Yeah."
yeah, she really likes doing, I mean, she and Paul have been doing this together for several years and
Oh, great.
came up with the idea years back, and so, yeah, she's really into it.
Another side note, Zoot has come on as a sponsor. They're going to provide us
Oh,
with
awesome.
hot beverages for a little, have a
Nice.
little setup
that's very
for
cool.
refreshments for folks. It seemed like a nice fit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of the other, 40 paper, or as well as?
Nope. In this case, the literary salon is in the Tucker Room in the afternoon.
Right.
So we're having coffee and tea and so forth
Oh,
versus a
nice.
bar. So it's instead of.
Right,
Right.
yeah, that makes sense.
Some people would mind having a drink at 2 in the afternoon, but not quite the mood we want to send.
Right. We're giving this a slightly different feel.
Schnapps in your coffee.
Yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
right.
There you go.
Great. Well, thank you.
Bring your own.
The next thing on the agenda is balcony cushions. And
Yes.
yeah, when we last spoke, there was an enormous amount of enthusiasm for the work that Kathleen did and what she came up with. Just for those who haven't heard, the notion of making custom-made cushions for the balcony seats made by the Maine State Prison Upholstery Shop, which just seems like a win-win. They do beautiful work. And it's just a nice community connection.
Yeah.
So we spoke with Kim Scott of Camden Conference, who was one of the bigger drivers of this, and we sort of agreed that it was just not really practical to try and get it done in time for Camden Conference in February. It seemed like
was a
a
lot.
bridge too far. So what we kind of came up with was the notion of doing a crowdfunding campaign in January, set it up in January so that it would exist while Camden Conference was going on and while SIF
Yeah.
is going on, so that they can plug to their folks who are
Yeah.
in those wonderfully, historically accurate, not completely comfortable seats. Wouldn't it be great to have cushions, and your donation will
idea.
make it so?
Gods.
So I haven't done a whole lot on it. I did start looking, and I'm sure I could use some guidance, and I'm looking at you, Rosanna, a little bit, because you tend to be the expert in these things. There's a whole bunch of sort of nonprofit crowdfunding options. And I've looked at things, tell me if any of these ring a bell, Fundly, or Bonfire, or Donate Kindly, or Snowball. They're all variations on a theme. Some of them you don't have to reach your goal to get your payoff, which is, I think, a good way to go. They have varying fees. Sadly, we're not really a 501c3, so some of them I don't think would be a great fit. Even though, we're a municipality, but that's not the same thing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of as far as I've gotten, is that once the dust settles from holidays and so forth, we wanted to pick one and
Go with that.
set it up, yeah.
Do you know what the cost per cushion, the cost per bum on seat is?
We do, it's 40, all in, it was like 40, it was under $50, 45 or $6 or $7,
And we needed how
Say
many?
50.
189.
Oh, crumbs.
Yep, it's a big project.
Yeah, I didn't print out my latest.
But there is
Right
something
up
you
at-
could cute,
Yes.
something cute you could do about
Right.
Oh, there's,
buy a seat.
Oh,
bum a seat,
definitely.
Right? If you could
Sure.
just add,
yeah, I think you're totally right. There's all sorts of fun possibilities.
Is that site where people can go online and click and donate?
Will be.
Okay.
And I think there's ways to tie it to our website. I have to do some more.
Okay.
Research.
But that's the
Research,
beauty
yeah.
of that, as opposed to just doing it at events or something.
Right. I mean, the hope would be that, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if Kim can pull this off, but I would encourage her to somehow, up on the screen while the people are seating themselves, flash a thing, say, go here,
Definitely.
make it.
That would be
Yeah.
really easy to do.
Yeah.
Set-
It's just whether she wants to.
Oh, she will.
I certainly hope so. I mean,
All
I know
those
they're-
people in the balcony will.
Yeah,
will
they're
want
very
her to.
careful about sort of their programming, but
Do it.
I think she will. I think it's
Yes.
worthwhile, and it'll so help their audience. Because those folks are in there way longer than a normal show, and that's why it's a bigger deal. You know, if you're in a 2-hour concert, it's not so big a deal.
Oh,
But
and
if
they're
you're in a
paying good money to
day-long
be there,
conference-
so, you know, you're
Yeah.
thinking about that while you're sitting there.
That's the hope. And I would try and get SIF to do something similar. I just want to
Yeah,
make it
SIF
as
will be great at
easy as
that.
possible for someone to take out their phone and help us out.
The
So,
other thing that we might want to consider doing is creating a hashtag
oh, yes,
where
several.
people can either send, hey, I donated, I bought myself a,
Send us a picture of your,
you know, or whatever. I don't know what, you know, the catchphrase would be, but the kids, the students that have to sit in those balcony seats will love that.
Butt
Most
putties.
of these crowdfunding things have
Yeah.
that. And then
Okay.
You can share, you can tag people.
Oh, good.
too, So
Tag
I could
people.
definitely.
And then we could-
Follow up with you.
That
We
would be
could
great.
create like just the basic info.
Yeah.
in a
yeah,
paragraph, too.
Yeah, and you can invite some of your friends, or, you know,
Right,
kind of, yeah.
exactly.
so I'm open to any assistance,
Great.
whatever form it takes. Fun ideas for names, because I am a tenderfoot with
Well, and-
this crowdfunding.
And when you've got it all worked out what you're doing, make sure you send all of us the right links so we can be
Absolutely.
posting it and sharing it and
Yep,
doing all that
absolutely.
too.
Definitely want them custom made because, okay.
Well,
They have to be, don't they?
for
I
one
mean,
thing, the seats are a particular shape.
It's a very odd size.
We got a cushion that was just a kind of cheap commercial cushion. It was okay, you know, it was kind of foam about yay thick and
Right,
black fabric.
right.
And it was really hard to attach it because seat cushions tend to be made for seats like this. So they're kind of square.
Right, right.
And these seats are kind of tapered where they
Yes,
go into the
yes.
hinge. So it really, to be a good fit, it kind of has to be a particular shape.
I have the samples if you want to take a look at the end of the meeting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
do
they're
excellent
gorgeous.
work.
They're
really do.
going to last forever.
Yeah, I think I think that's a real cool aspect of it that we should be pushing in our marketing is that these are being made locally.
Agreed. It's a
prison. I
great
think that's-
story.
And the
It is a
prison
great
has a really
story.
good reputation as, you know, craftspeople.
That
and-
industries program is a really exceptional program.
How much does one cushion cost?
40-ish?
40,
Yeah, about
call it
40.
45, say, was it, or less than 50, a
I
little
think it
more
wound
than
up being
40?
like 4250.
Okay,
That was labor and material.
material and everything.
And I remember the material was the easy care material too, which was also an important aspect of it, that we don't have to, you know, have these dry cleaned every month or something.
No, not at all.
You want something that will last forever, so to
That would be
speak.
the ideal.
Wipe down kind of.
Wipe it down if you need to.
Right.
If there was a web page that was donate a cushion or buy a cushion or butts on fire or whatever for it. I'm sorry that,
Cushion tush.
yeah, that's good, I like that. But if the Opera House, every show that you did had a button, SIF,
Well,
the
we could-
registration for Camden Conference,
Well, that's where we're hoping to push it because,
yeah, I know, but if you just
yeah.
throw hooks out there.
Absolutely. I mean, I would put it on our upcoming event slide in the front window and in the lobby and before all our
I was
films.
talking about a click button.
An actual button.
Yeah, in addition, but, you know, if you're on a website, I find it much easier to donate if I can click a button. Wikipedia hits me up and I say yes, whereas if I had to actually do
Go there.
anything.
True. Yep, that's a good point.
Okay.
The
Look
Community
into.
Arts Fund had a click my button.
We do, on our
I know.
website. Oh, sorry.
I clicked it.
Oh, good man, thank you.
Lazy donator.
Any kind of donator is a good donator.
That sounds like your segue to the next title.
Yeah.
Son of a gun. It is. So I think we've addressed cushions. So like I said, any ideas you have are welcome. So the next thing on our agenda is the Community Arts Fund. And the reason I put it on the agenda came out of a conversation in our office. We did a mailing recently, and I was curious what the amount we made from mailings was compared to what the amount we take in from donations at the Blue Cafe, donations at the free movies, and just
Thank you.
basic, or donations when you buy a ticket. And the amounts were about the same. So it just made me think, it seemed like it was worth talking about. Do we sort of ramp up the way we take those kind of donations, or do we look at our mailed out appeal? I'm going to, in a second, I think, turn it over to Rosanna because she had a bunch of great ideas. My concern is that this time of year, there's such a blizzard of asks. I just know in my mailbox, I don't know, I started collecting them because now I pay more attention to see what other people are doing. I don't know, I probably have 20. It's a lot for not a big community. And I'm also kind of sensitive to the fact that there's a lot of nonprofits, there's a lot of deserving charities, and we're all kind of, going for the same folks. And so I just wanted to kind of throw it out for ideas, and maybe I will pass it over because I know you had some. So rather than me try and paraphrase.
Yeah, I think, so there's a bunch of questions in here. I guess the first thing is, my response was, in terms of the mailing, how long of a perspective we're looking at, right? Is it like, okay, for the last 3 years we've done this and we're seeing a drop off? Or, I guess what's the overall strategy? And, and the thing is that, yes, the problem is that people don't clean up their databases. They just use the same list over and over again, and then it's just spam, right?
Wasn't
Whether
this-
it comes in hard format or emails, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. How many people was this going to? Wasn't it like 100? I mean, this is not a big mailing.
Huge list.
I
It started
think-
bigger.
I think it's about 4 years now it's been done, 5 years maybe. And usually seems like there's one big donor or something, and then everything else just sort of dribbles in. It's not very productive, especially for the time and energy put into the physicality of mailing it. It doesn't seem like it's worth it to me.
I was just going to add that, I mean, mailings are typically not a very money-efficient way to get money, but it's worth doing them. But with only 100 names on the list, I mean, mailings, getting like a 5% return would be good. I mean, to have, 5 people send something back. It seems like we either need to expand our mailing list or do more mailing. I mean, can we draw names from people buying tickets? I mean, are there other places we can get names from to make that mailing going out to more people, and specifically people who have come to events at the Opera House?
Yep. Couple of quick answers. Mark's right, the appeal, maybe 5 or 6 years old. This particular, the Community Arts Fund, I think of as this is our second year, because we really kind of pivoted a little bit. The old appeal kind of started big and ran out of gas a little bit, I think partly because it never identified what its purpose was. It just kind of said, would you like to support us? And I always felt like people would feel better about supporting us if we clarified
If they know what they're doing.
why they should support us, particularly when they're also looking at all these other charities. So we really thinned it down to just people who had given something mostly to try and make it as sort of effective as it could be. So that 100 number that's how we sort of got to it.
How much money did it bring in last year?
Well, this is embarrassing. I don't think I have that in front of me. I think it brought in a couple $1,000s.
That's good for only 100 people.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
That's good.
I
You're
will
getting more than a 10x
find out and get that to you.
return because you mailed less than 97 people last year. In 2018, I looked at the database. So that's more than 10x per person, right? If you were
Yeah.
to, you know, if you were to just do simple math on that.
It works out to $20 per mailing, if I did my math right.
I mean, that's pretty typical.
So maybe
Not
my,
low.
Also,
that's good to know.
you may not see anything come in until the first of the year.
Right.
That's true, too.
Because I know with SIF, we often didn't see things pop up in the mailbox until January.
That's a good
Right.
point. And just another thing to note, Renee did a mailing for us in
That's right.
May, was it?
Yep.
I think so.
Sort of halfway through the year,
Right,
which was
that's
great.
right.
But some of the folks who gave to your appeal ended up on our list, and I'm sure they're going to say, I just gave.
Right.
So the numbers aren't, these are kind of footnotes.
If they keep good enough track, though, I mean, yes and no. I mean, if it's that far apart, do you remember who you gave to in March now?
No.
No.
Is it possible?
No, I think you're typical.
Just to finish my thought here, just in terms of.
Sorry, I got us
No,
all
it's okay,
waylaid,
it's okay,
so-
But I think that if you wanted to, do a kind of proper analysis as to like what's working, what's not, what's moving the needle, it would be good to look at it over time so that you're not, because like you say, we did something in May and it's only 2 years.
Right.
So there's ways to segment your database. So you look at who your audience is, who are the high val people, who should be getting, a more custom handwritten letter versus like, an email versus snail mail,
Yeah.
right? Like maybe snail mail isn't right for 85, 90% of your audience, and we can do something more effective with email. Then there's.
But if somebody
then
sent
there's a
$500 to the letter, we want to write them a nice letter.
really glossy mailers, and I think, holy moly, how much did you spend on this thing to get your whatever? So, there's all different ways. There's the question of when, just to finish the thought. And then, to your point about what are we trying to do with this? Because even if you did forego trying to ask for donations, a direct ask, I still think that having some kind of contact with your regular, like your loyal supporters at this, it's a reminder of like that we're here. And so even if it's a thank you letter, right? Even if you don't send an appeal with like rip off this coupon and check 50, 20, 100, something that is an acknowledgement, I think is very meaningful, so there's just different ways to approach it. Go ahead. Yeah.
My question, I think that's all, being in contact with the people that support are really important. My question goes to a different matter, though. I used to be in charge years ago of maintaining a mailing list of many thousands of radio stations, and it was miserable. Keeping an updated mailing list is horrible, and it's incredibly time-consuming, so that's my question. Who's doing it? Do you have the time to do it?
And that's a great question. And that was sort of part of what was in my head, was just trying to think, what's sort of the best bang for buck energy-wise when you have, a small staff.
Well, the good
And-
thing is that technology's changed a lot too in
That
those
is
10
true.
years. So it's actually very, very automated these days once you set it up, right? So these people that are currently living on an Excel spreadsheet can actually go to your MailChimp,
Yep.
which just grows every time somebody buys a ticket. So all of these things are actually quite easily automated nowadays. And if somebody gets an email and they don't respond after 3 times, you can call them out automatically. If people opt out, those things are
That
all.
gets automatically
Those aren't
called out.
manual anymore, so there's actually, but it does require some setup in the front end to just streamline that a little bit.
But 100 people is
Did you have a mail service do it? How did you put it out?
We physically mailed it, envelopes, packets. We have a MailChimp that goes out once a month, and typically it's upcoming events. And always at the end, there's this thing that says, one more thing, and it's usually some comment from me that's either sort of fun or just an attention getter. And we have either thanked people for their donations and reminded them that the Community Arts Fund exists and what it does. A couple times a year, we just try and sort of put it in people's consciousness.
You get response to that? Have you put in a link so?
I don't believe so. Right now, it's just information. It's just a mailer.
Which is good, because you don't want to ask for money every single time you communicate with people.
Right.
It's more to promote what's coming up, right?
Right. It's a advertising tool.
I'm just going to speak to my personal experience with helping out a lot with SIF when they were really doing some pretty heavy-duty by mail. And they sort of had a tier of people that deserved an individual ask.
Like a personalized.
Oh, yeah, lunch, dinner, whatever. And then they did do a large mailing, and Ben was encouraged by the board to personalize something on every single letter. Like, it was a blank, whatever, dear, and he would write something on each letter. Yeah, it was a chore.
Well, and
Especially to pin that man down
I mean,
was
if
a
you've
chore.
been on, a board, I mean, that's pretty typical, is the board members all write personal notes on the
And
annual
board members
appeal,
would go
so.
for, they would handle
yeah.
the higher level
Yeah.
people, but people really responded.
To the personalized.
Yeah.
Outreach.
They don't want the blank, shiny letter in the mail with,
Interesting. I mean, it makes sense. Of course, it's a stronger connection.
and then the thank you letter, of course, was
Yep.
super personalized.
And those we do send out, and I sign them all and write a little note or
Yeah.
whatever, so. Well, this is great, this is helpful.
Is it possible to get on a mailing list link with either Camden Conference or SIF, do you think, or is that?
I don't know. In other words, get their mailing list?
Yeah, from people maybe that they would recommend you to have, if that was even an okay thing to do. I don't know if it's even,
Usually nonprofits have a specific policy about it,
Yeah,
and most
very
of them don't
proprietary.
share their
It's
list.
very regulated, even
okay, yeah,
commercial.
that's what I was wondering.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's
Can't share
personal
databases.
There's so
information.
many people that you overlap with, too. We
true.
overlap with.
But they could send
Here.
something on your behalf.
Yes.
If it's a SIF Selects kind of thing, SIF, SIF
Right.
could send to their people on behalf of SIF Selects, which is featured at the Camden Conference. So
Yeah,
they
there you
can
go,
push
there you go.
something out that is an acknowledgement, but they can't share databases legally.
Well, thank you. You've given me some good stuff to think about. And it's an ongoing thing, and your point is a really good one. You have to sort of give it time and watch the longer arc
Right.
and not the
'Cause
shorter
all of
one.
this, is, to your point, is all quite new, even the Community Arts Fund, pivoting that, and it's
Yeah.
really a good thing that is, I think the community is really responding in
Yeah.
a lot of different ways,
Definitely.
right? So you might see more.
On the one hand, I agree that I think they are, and on the other hand, I will talk to people and they'll say, Blue Cafe, what's that? Or something where you think it's, and you realize there's lots more outreach to do, that, while there's folks who haven't been reached, and so that's our job to figure out how to do that. So,
Your little vignettes on Facebook are fabulous.
Yeah, they're fun, and Instagram, they're fun.
Yeah, it's like a brand now.
it's just a wonderful blessing to have an annoying habit be like a marketing plan.
It's
It's all about ending up in the right spot. Great. I just want to talk about a couple upcoming shows. Some you know about and some you don't. Very Hungry Caterpillar is our kind of big family show in March. It's on the 7th. And it's a wonderful show. It's a touring show out of Nova Scotia. So we are going to use the slightly quiet weeks in the beginning of the year to figure out the best way to reach out to schools and libraries and just everybody who's a potential audience for that, because we'd really like to bring those folks in. The library's on board, they're going to help us, which is a great partnership because it's their audience we want, really. And they're really good at what they do, so I'm happy that they're on board.
Will we be notifying the other libraries apart? Yes, we
Yep,
will.
I think that's a great idea, and that's,
Because we've got a good girl in Rockland, the Rockland Library,
absolutely.
a really top
Yep.
old girl.
Yep. We have a new thing, this Songs for Hope. This is it's a songwriter showcase. It grew out of the Mallet Show. Caroline Cotter, who opened for David Mallet, was wonderful. she came to us because she approached me and said, I'm friends with Katie Matzell and Sarah Halley Richardson, both of whom had played here. And she said, they raved about the place, they loved it. So we ended up, she opened for David Mallet. After seeing her, we had a conversation and said, wouldn't it be interesting to get those three women, Katie Matzell, Sarah Halley Richardson, and Caroline Cotter, and do this kind of songwriter circle like we used to see ASCAP used to put them on in New York, where you'd have, Lyle Lovett and John Hyatt and a bunch of people just sitting on stools, and they just kind of go
Take
round
turns
robin. And
singing
take
a song,
turns, and
talking
they sing
about
on
it.
each other's songs. And, these three women are super talented, and they're great friends. And I thought this could be a really fun night. And Beth had the idea, she said we should make it a benefit for like New Hope for Women. And it's
Oh,
like,
that's a great
boom.
idea.
Right,
So it just kind of, the idea just
right.
When is it?
out of that.
It's not on here.
It is April 24th. It's the end of
Missed the
April.
card.
So that's something that we're doing that I think is going to be a great night. And it's sort of under the Maine Made Music banner, so it'll be a door split. A big chunk will go to New Hope for Women. Each artist will get a slightly smaller chunk, and the Opera House will get a chunk to cover our expenses. So that's something we're excited about. We have Blue Cafes booked pretty much through October, starting with cold chocolate in February. Nick Apollonio, this kind of grew out of a suggestion that came from you, I think. He's a local luthier. He
Yeah.
builds beautiful instruments. So he's going to play different instruments he's built and talk about the construction of them. That I think will be fun.
So a whole year you're full up.
We have a lot.
Wow.
Garrett Susi is playing in April. He used to be in a band called Tree by Leaf. Do you remember them? He's
Amazing.
wonderful. I saw him and his wife. They were one of the SIF musicians last year, and I thought they were great. So they're coming in April. May, Beth is working on a spin-off of the Moms Tell All that may be pet-oriented. People talking about
Really?
their pets. So she's working on that. That's kind of on the drawing board.
Interesting.
For Jazz in June, it's going to be New Shades of Blue is in the Blue Cafe. And then in July, it's a singer-songwriter from New York City named Elena Brody, who is really interesting. We may have two in August, because I had two that were both so good, and I thought, we're so far out, just in case one of them drops off. But one is a singer-songwriter called Eva, and one is a duo out of Chicago called MMCM, which is their initials.
Question, I was wondering about that. You think there's room to do more than one a month?
Don't know, but I'm willing to try. It's become so popular that it
thinking it-
emboldened me.
I think it's a good idea.
We'll see. That'll be sort of our test case. September, we're doing something interesting. A local, kind of local, he's a Belfast guy. Tom Luther is a jazz pianist and composer. He teaches at Mid-Coast Music Academy. He has composed this kind of quadraphonic electric music thing. So he's going to put speakers in four corners of the Blue Cafe, and it's going to be this spatial performance. So I think that's going to be cool. And then I'm trying to get Rosie Geary for October. Local guy. He's kind of the whole other thing, but I don't want to ignore the kind of folks who've been around and are local folks. So that's penciled in.
It's a good mix.
Sounds great.
So that's Blue Cafe. We're doing another sort of interesting thing that we have called Dirigo Rocks. It's a little mini fest in March. There's a music festival called Arust Acoustic that takes place up in, where is it? New Sweden, or it's out in the sticks, but they've been doing it for years, and it's really popular. It's this like outdoor music festival. This guy Travis Sear does it. Through a connection in the town, we've hooked up with him, so we're doing a mini version. 4 bands. Who are they? His band, Shirt Tail Kin. I'm sorry, I'm blanking out. 2 other, but they're kind of cool up-and-coming Maine bands, and we're tying it in with the bicentennial, because there's a lot of press to be had for Maine's bicentennial. So if we sort of label this as a bicentennial event, we get to really promote it. So that's March 14th, and that's another Maine Made Music kind of door split thing.
And when, is it a regular evening show, or is
Yep.
it? Okay,
Start a little early, go a little late.
got it.
And then the last thing I'm going to mention is Happenstance Theater is back. You might remember, they did Pinot and Augustine for Winterfest, and then they came back in the summer and did something called Preposterous, which was they called it the Pocket Circus. And they're growing an audience, and people with kids love them because the kids have a blast, because it's, it's very vaudeville-y, slapsticky, old-time circus. And they are another one, we're doing a door split because they are passing by, and that is in August.
Yeah,
August
I noticed,
7th.
I noticed that they booked themselves up the coast.
They're out of DC. Yeah. When they came for Winterfest the first time, I really liked them. I thought they'd be a good fit. They were kind of expensive because we had to bring them here just for this show. And I didn't want to do that again, but all the way back to the airport, they were pitching me, saying, we could do this, and we could do that, because they just loved the theater. Performers love our stage. And so that's what we worked out, that they're coming by anyway. We said, great, let's do like a no-risk thing. No risk for you, no risk for us. So that's in the summer. And I think summer is it's a little dicey, but I think it's a good time for circusy stuff.
Yeah.
So that is upcoming show things. And at this point, I think I would like to turn it over to Matt to talk about jazz in June.
Why, thank you, David. Well, let me say that into the mic. So, yeah, Jazz in June. December, we have nearly 7 months left to go, and we're in very good shape. Today, I spent most of the day out chasing sponsors and had some nice verbal commitments from the banks in the area. Got about $1,000 committed from private sources, of which I think 350 is in already. So that's good. There's a lot more work to be done. And again, everybody said be out in November for your ask, but now everybody says, well, we'll deal with it after the first of the year. So the asks are in. And for the big guys, I've got a lot more places to go. I've sent a message to Lyman Morris and a couple other of the bigger local companies. I realized the other day as I sat down, I now have a master list with 32 items to do on it. And so next week, December 18th at 5:30 in the tech room, we have our committee meeting, and I hope to hand off some of those items.
What day is it, Matt?
The 18th, Wednesday, the 18th at 5:30 in the Tucker room.
Right.
We have pretty much all our artists lined up. We don't have every name of every artist in every group, but for the most part, we have commitments. The Right Track, which opened the festival last year, will do a dance at the Snow Bowl. They've committed. Friday, Dave has the Shades of Blue at the Blue Cafe, which will be a little earlier than a normal Blue Cafe. Friday night, our feature concert will feature the Jim McNeely Trio. Jim McNeely was Stan Getz's piano player for 5-6 years. He's a composer. He's very well known in New York and overseas. And he's going to bring a bass player and drummer of great jazz repute along with him. So he will feature on Friday night. And then we have a group called the Harry Allen Quartet. Harry Allen is over 70 albums, very smooth sax player, often likened interestingly, to Stan Getz in his style. And his group includes Mike Renzi, who was the musical director for both Tony Bennett and Mel Torme. And then a rhythm section that's been here a couple times before with Greg Abadi. So that's Friday night. Saturday afternoon, we've booked our sound system for the Snow Bowl. We've reserved the Opera House in case it rains, which we hope it doesn't. I've got a lunch with...
Talking about Rockport Opera House?
Yeah. Okay. I've got a lunch with Tom Ulickme from Midcoast Music Academy to see about having their All-Stars open the afternoon show at the Snow Bowl. It's very effective at the Blues Festival, and I think the equivalent jazz version of that would be great to give them exposure on a big stage. And then we have 4 other bands, including very talented Noah Fishman from Belfast, who's putting together a jazz group for the occasion. The Whitehead Dean Group, Wayne Delano Quartet. I've still got to get Wayne locked in. And a great gypsy jazz group from Portland called Blue Fuse. And then Saturday night, our feature show, as you've probably all heard, is the Brubeck Brothers celebrating the centennial of their father and playing his famous album, Time Out. And it's a great show, and they do some audio-visual stuff that they'll be on the screen, and just really cool. And the opening act there is a guy named Frank Vignola, his hot jazz trio, and 2 guitars and an acoustic bass playing gypsy jazz standards, dance steps, very funny guys, and very, very talented. In fact, I just read that Frank Vignola had played guitar on a couple Steely Dan albums, which I never knew. So, and that's not his, you wouldn't think of it as his forte. He's really much a straight jazz player. And then Sunday morning, the West Bay Rotary has just committed to doing the pancake breakfast at the Snow Bowl, and we'll have a jazz artist also for that. The lift will be open at the Snow Bowl both on Saturday and Sunday, so that people can, separate from the jazz, take a ride up to the top of the mountain, and if you're from out of town. We booked our advertisement in Downbeat Magazine. We've got a lot of promotion and promotional work to do, which will really kick off in January. And then on January, I'm also going to New York City for 3 days to what's called the Jazz Congress, which is at you know where it is. It's on the west side. It's a big Philharmonic building, and it's
Lincoln Center?
Lincoln Center. Thank you very much. That's the one. Anyway, it was recommended to me last summer by a couple of the artists that were here and said you should go. And I got in very early, so my cost was cheap. I got $100 rooms in New York, which is pretty amazing.
Ooh, yes.
And as part of the Congress, and it's really about, there's meetings for 2 solid days, from anywhere from how a jazz artist tours to make money to promotion. But I've been told the real secret is not any of that, it's all the stuff in between. So
Sure.
Carol's going to make up a rack card that basically has all our information on it, and I'll be strategically leaving them on coffee tables and tucking them under door rooms and things, and hopefully get to meet a lot of people.
Slipping them into laptop bags.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe I'll put adhesive and I can go out and pat people on the back and it'll stick on. Anyway, so it's going to be, I'm looking forward to it. A, I love New York City, and B, it's supposedly a good place to interact with a lot of folks.
Yeah.
And that's my report.
Great.
I'm going to go to
Sounds
sleep
great.
now until January 2nd.
After the 18th.
Right. Except for the, good point, Mark. Yeah, okay, I'll stay awake till the end of that meeting on the 18th.
What is on sale is the All Access Pass. We wanted to, I think at Matt's behest, get it on sale so people could give them as gifts for Christmas.
Perfect
'cause they.
stocking stuffer.
Such a good idea.
So they're on the website and they're for sale, and we've been sort of dropping not very subtle hints to folks of what a great gift they'd make. And as soon as the rest of the contracts and everything else, we can sort of start putting up the individual tickets, but we have time, so.
We'll try to put the individual tickets in February. The laminate cards with the lanyard, this year we laminated cards, are going to be done later this week. I think Dagny's going to post, she made a mock-up of one and laminated it, so we're going to post that on the site as well. And we've sold a couple. I haven't got my brother to buy his yet, so that'll be, but I'll be pressuring him. So, but yeah, and it's $80 this year, which is $20 cheaper than last year, and gets you into all the.
It's a great deal.
It's a great deal.
Gets
So.
you into more things. I mean, it seems like there's more things.
Well, it gets you into more things, and it's a way better deal than last year was a good deal, but this year's a way better deal. So.
Thank you.
So the last thing I have to offer is this. 2020 is pretty set booking-wise, but 2021 is a blank canvas, and I would love to sort of encourage everybody to kind of let your imagination go. And I'm thinking now is a great time to think about what would we want to do, because there's enough time to really sort of look down the road. And, is it dance? Is it theater? What do we want to do for a holiday show? What do we want to do for the Windjammer concert or the Toboggan concert or other free films or Maine-made music? Everything we do is kind of wide open. And so I would love to hear your thoughts about this whenever they come to you. This is not like there's no deadline, but I'm just putting a bug in your ear to share whatever you think of. And it doesn't matter how, if it's attainable or not, we start with just, let's make a wish list, and then we figure out what we can actually pull off. But
Dave, can I suggest that we, and maybe it's February, that we actually take a meeting, one of our meetings, and do just that, which is bring in
Yes.
bring in who we know we're going to have, Camden and Conference, hopefully, and SIF, and the school, whatever we know is going to fill that schedule.
Yep.
And then we'll see what's not filled, and then I think we go through all the new stuff, Blue Cafe and Made Music, and then everything else you just listed, dance, classical.
Great idea.
And we can sort of all get it out. We can all bring whatever we think to that meeting and then all get it out there and see what we come up with. So.
Good.
would it, on my calendar, our next meeting would be January 28th. Does that sound right? That's, and I would ask, is that too soon to do exactly that?
I don't think so.
It seems like it might be a great time to do it. I will sort of mock up a calendar with all the stuff we know is going to
Yeah,
be
that's,
there.
I think, the most important, so we kind of
See
have
what
a visual.
spaces are left.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff, we know that the slot is there, but there's nothing in the slot. So we can say, what about the Windjammer concert?
Right.
Or the Toboggan concert?
right.
Or the family programming, or,
Now, are we talking specifically for this coming year or
2021?
2021?
2021.
2021.
Yep,
right.
2020 is really about as
Okay.
booked as I dare to
As
book
you
it.
said, okay.
Because
Right.
I have to be careful. It's kind of like shopping online with a credit card. It's way too easy to just say, oh, that looks great, that looks great. But every show, there's a lot of prep, and then there's things that have to be done after the show. But not only that, there's how much you can promote it.
Staff.
Right.
You don't have a lot of staff.
So if you have a big show every couple of weeks, it doesn't give you enough time to really reach out to people because, and people sometimes say, oh, couldn't you do more stuff? It's like, I really am very cautious about that, not only for staff burnout, but just for allowing us to promote them properly, so.
Well, and I think there will be opportunities that'll come up that you'll want to take advantage of that we don't know about. That somebody's
Right.
touring and calls you, or an agent calls you.
Or a
and
rental.
says-
I
or
mean,
a
which is,
rental, right, so.
we don't talk about that a whole lot here because we talk a lot about opera house productions, but, rentals are half of what we do.
Sure.
And there's people like, say, Everyman, who sometimes don't book that far out. So it's good to have a little bit of space for,
Yeah,
or like Bay
yeah.
Chamber sometimes will grab
Right.
some cool show and say,
Like that wonderful dance performance 2 years ago.
yes.
And then they managed to bring in a bunch of school educational
Embarrassed that
programs.
the name is not in my head.
Yeah, me neither.
But I know what you mean. Yeah, they were great.
And the great thing about that is you're not dealing with having to foot the bill on the production costs. It's just the time that they're here.
Right.
Good.
Yeah, Bay Chamber's bringing, just as an aside, they're bringing a very cool show in
Piano
February.
battle, I saw that on the card.
Piano battle.
That looks really
It's
interesting.
pretty wild.
Piano
That's on the 12th of February. There's these two pianists. They're very accomplished international pianists, and they've created this program that is kind of like a duel. And it gets very crazy, and the audience votes after every bit. And they really play it up, but they're under the pianos, pounding on the bottom. I mean, they play a piano every way a piano can be played. They move them around the stage. The pianos have wireless pickups.
another piano for that?
Bay Chamber's bringing in 2 grand pianos because they have to match.
It looks fun.
There's a lot of moving parts to this show,
That
Wow.
sounds fun.
Yeah, it does.
but it'll be a great show. And, so.
Okay, fun.
Great.
So where do you look for shows to book and ideas?
Any place and every place. I get a lot of emails from booking agents. And you can kind of figure out which booking agents represent acts that are a good fit, or in some cases, which booking agents you want to deal with and which ones you don't. For example, the agency that books Lunasa is FLI, and they've been great. We've dealt with them a bunch, and we've always had a really good experience. And so I looked to see who else they had. That's where I found the Campbell brothers, because I thought, I like dealing with these folks. We always have a good experience. I sort of trust their taste. Who else do they represent besides Lunasa and some of these other folks? So sometimes I seek it out that way. Sometimes stuff falls in our lap. I poke around online a lot. So,
Just as I think I've said, we had over 70 people want to play at Jazz in June after 1 year.
Right.
And a lot of that was an agent's Dave deal to say, here's 9 artists, what do you think? And that's great. And the word's out now that this is a great place to play, so.
I'll tell you what I really get a kick out of is I've had people approaching me about the Blue Cafe from, like this group that's from Chicago. They reached out and said, we want to play the Blue Cafe. And I'm thinking, friend of a friend of a friend.
How does that work?
The Blue Cafe?
There's no ticket fee or anything for Blue Cafe, but people are going to come from Chicago to perform.
The way it works is they try to do it when they're playing other places in the Northeast. We pay them an honorarium as much as we feel like we can. It's not a lot, but it's enough to make it worth their while. And we try for traveling folks to get local lodging to sponsor them and give them a room. So, for example, Hiroya Sakamoto, who was just here, he was amazing, super good. We started a conversation months and months ago. He's out of New York City, but he was doing a couple other things, and so we were able to get him when he was up here, give him a room in a beautiful inn, and I don't know, we paid him, I don't know, $250 or something. I mean, not necessarily what someone is sort of worth out in the world.
Right.
But, if you're going to play a house concert or a small club, you sometimes don't make a whole lot more than that. And they come here, it's in a beautiful town, it's in a beautiful setting, they have a full house, a wonderful rousing response, they stay in a beautiful inn, and then they're on their way. So
How bad is that?
we try to make it sort of a pleasant experience and a working vacation.
Right.
Pretty incredible.
And it's starting to just pick up momentum, which is really exciting.
But you can't, if you show up late, you can't get into the room. I've never seen an open seat in the main room
Yeah.
in months and months and months.
Yeah, we had, 80 for Diado? 80, I mean, not all of them, we had probably 65 that were either in the one room or the other, but then we had people coming and going, and people stay for a set of the 2 sets or whatever, but,
Yeah, you
It's
really
good.
have to get there early if you want a seat. Even a seat, for me, like, if we get there early, often all the seats in the room are full.
Well, was it for Hiroya? One of them,
Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
a room's worth of people were in line. So we opened the door and the room filled up in like 10 minutes, which is a good problem to have. I feel bad turning people away. But, long ago, I used to work at the Hard Rock Cafe in Manhattan, and having a line out on the sidewalk is like the best advertising you can get. So,
Do you want to keep that scarcity, or the reason why is because I was at that show, and yeah, it was Q's, but I was talking to, why am I blanking on her name? About, you could very easily have a live like you could show what is on stage in that other room, because the sound quality is good in the other room. You just can't see it, right? So if you wanted to do that.
yeah. And I am still wrestling with that.
I know. It
Part of me
means more
really
logistical
likes
things.
what it is, which is this very kind of organic, intimate,
Yeah.
a little bit exclusive. It's like you really have to sort of be on the ball. You can't
Sure.
sort of wander in late. It's
Right.
like, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it makes it,
Yeah.
it adds a specialness to the performance that, and I don't think
I like-
every single show will be packed or sold out. I certainly hope they're full, but
I like sitting in the outer room, actually.
it's not a bad experience.
You're truly just listening to the music, so you're not.
I mean, if you sit where you can see through the doorway, it's okay. And if you're on a couch or something,
Yeah.
it sounds fun. It's just,
And once in a while, you can go look around the corner and see what they look like.
I have a real soft spot for the organic nature of it. It's like a little intimate room, and you're right in front of these folks. It's rare to be able to have that experience with really good people.
My problem is it's another crowdfunding, but I think the couches are unbelievably uncomfortable, and I think the high tables with those chairs are pretty uncomfortable too. And I had a couple people in the last concert who said, I love sitting in the other room, but if you had like tables and chairs, and I could get a drink, and I could sit here. And
You're saying like cafe tables,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
two tops?
Yeah. And I thought, because I'm always out there. I don't ever go in the big room other than to peek in, look around the corner. But it's not very comfortable. And I think you could make it more comfortable for 15 or 20 people, whatever you want to put in that room. But of course, it's money.
Where's Pop Tech
That's a
and
nice
that
idea.
furniture donation, right?
That's where that furniture came from.
Rob, son, we could go.
It wasn't donated, we bought it,
Oh,
but
you bought it, okay.
Yeah.
It's probably.
And it doesn't have to all be done at once, too. I mean,
No.
and it doesn't
Well,
have to all be the same. We could get
Own chair.
funky stuff. I mean, it
the
could be.
truth is, the Blue Cafe was thrown together with whatever we had. I mean, that green rug came from my house.
Right.
So it's like,
I still have carpets I could bring in for that
Yeah.
other room, by the way.
and and that
Just bring
sort
them
of
in.
contributes to the
Notice.
funkiness, and that's okay. But it's never been thought out, and so it certainly could be
Right, right.
designed.
Well,
Like
the
how do we
and
want
I think the funkiness part is cool.
Yeah.
But, I mean,
Bring
just-
your own chair, funky.
You could do that. Then everybody would try to put 80 chairs in the one room.
I
And then,
know.
the thing about that is that we don't normally have people standing in that room. There's usually the 40-some chairs. 50, and then people go in the other room. But they were lining the back wall, and it was hot. I mean, it was
Yeah.
great, but
Yeah.
it was
Okay.
a good show.
Yeah, it was a great show.
And the band no longer exists, by the way, so you missed your last chance. The guy lives in L.A., and she's in
local.
She's playing with the group that's at the Strand next week.
Lulu Wiles?
Lulu Wiles. She's in that group, so.
Wow.
Anyway.
So that's it for me. Is there anything else anyone else wants to bring up this evening?
Your letter was good,
Oh,
if not long.
I guess we can just say what that is. Maybe it's self-evident, but I was a little bit inspired, whether he knows it or not, by Mark to do this. Because,
very
when I first got the
inspirational.
job, I think I did a better job of communicating with the select board, like what we're doing and stuff. And then you get busy and, I have not been doing a good job. So I thought, it's time to give the select board an update and say, here's what's going on, here's our plans moving forward. Because, they have to pay attention to a whole lot of stuff. There's no way they can pay attention to everything we're doing. So I thought, so I just kind of knocked out a sort of a highlights. And as soon as I have the numbers from Lunasa, I will send it out. But I thought Lunasa is going to be a good show, so I want to wait until that show is over, and then our calendar year will really be done. It's not the same as the fiscal year, but it.
Our last select board meeting is next Tuesday, so we'll be able to talk about it.
Oh, good. Yeah, I mean, if they choose to, it's just information in hopes that it will help them see what we're up to.
I liked it. I thought it was
I did
a
too.
good evaluation.
Oh,
of
absolutely.
What's going on.
Good reminder of
I
everything.
also personally really appreciated that you talked about that you don't really have a full staff. And make people aware of that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So we
Well,
will.
I'm of two minds, because on the one hand, I think it helps to help people understand what a normal theater has. All our sort of peer theaters, most of them, have a lot bigger staff than we do.
That's true.
Of course, on the other hand, we have the benefit of the town finance department, and we have the benefit, so it's not apples to apples. But on the other hand, I hate to be too kind of shrill about it, because I don't want to sound like I'm complaining. I just think it's worth noting, just as a reality, that, we have 2.5 staff people to run a
That's been
theater.
true for a
That's
while.
pretty lean. Oh,
I can say part of the conversation we had, there were mistaken ideas about how big the staff was on the select board.
Really?
Yeah. Everybody thought that Dagny was a full-time employee when she is not.
Yep.
So that, if people don't know, and part of one of the people had somebody from, some person in the town say, well, why is the staff at the Opera House so big? And I said, it's not so big. What are you talking about? It's not that big. And so I had to dial them back. Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't realize that.
Because they were looking at all the event
Right,
managers.
and also,
Yeah, where
you
they-
tend to, the other thing that, it'd be good to have in one of these meetings, a calendar that has all of the other things that you do besides the shows. Because Juniper has to set up, I'm in this building, this is my second committee meeting today. Juniper has to set up all that on here, all the technical stuff, for the select board and all that stuff. There's so many meetings in this building that they have to deal with that have nothing to do with a show in the Opera House, and people forget that.
And to your point, and it's a good point, there's also rehearsals.
Yeah.
People look at the Nutcracker and see 3 or 4 days. It's 8 or 9 days. And she's in here every night doing rehearsals. And then she works Juniper works every show. And Dagny works a lot of the shows. So there's that unseen part.
And that's one of the other things that's happened, is because Juniper's taken over that responsibility, because you do flex time now, correct? Yeah. So what used to happen, prior administrations used to charge overtime. They'd make people come to work 9 to 5, and then when maybe there wasn't stuff going on, and then charge overtime, which cost the town a lot of money. And now Juniper tends to do a lot of the shows, which means we don't have to pay additional people to come in. So we're actually saving a lot of money.
Right.
So there's all those sorts of pieces that people didn't get. And it's really important to know that these 2.5 people are maximizing, this huge building and all these rooms, because it's this room, and it's a Tucker room, and it's the 3rd floor, and it's the meeting room, and then other various odds and ends, and it's moving tables and moving things like that. You don't think about that stuff.
Also, Dave is responsible for the building. When he's meeting with contractors and looking at the roof and looking at windows, that's not promoting shows and doing the stage or so. But I mean, my feedback is that I get from people is that, and there's always a grumpy person somewhere in the world, but the Opera House is finally living to its potential for the community, and I get that all the time, whether it's the Blue Cafe or the Maine Made Music or the shows, the big shows. And I think that's the key thing, is that the select board and the town is that. And if they disagree, they should speak up. But I mean, I think we're really delivering to the community, which I'm not sure we always were delivering.
One of the things, Blue Cafe amazed me. That came out of his brain somewhere. I don't
It
know,
did.
what made it pop up. But it's so hard to establish.
Where it came from.
It's so hard to establish identities now, because nobody reads the same press, looks at the same TV stations, stuff like that. So establishing a brand is incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
And like I said, you can't come to one of these shows unless you're here on time, because it's packed. And that identity, and people know it, and you see the blue lights. I mean, they've established a brand new brand in a year, which is incredibly hard to do.
It's really wonderful.
And when you have people from Chicago calling, say, I want to play basically for free in
Nothing,
your
yeah.
little tiny space up in the 3rd floor, that's incredible.
Well, I will, and maybe this is a good way to wind up, because I bet everybody wants to go home, but I will say, just to jump on what you guys are both saying, I've gotten a ton of great feedback from the town, which is really gratifying, just because I think the Opera House is such a great resource. I'm really happy when people are excited about it. And I feel like it's kind of this perfect storm. It's partly evolved over time, and it's grown, But, you know, we have a great staff right now, which makes all the difference in the world. We have a great Opera House committee right now, which makes all the difference in the world. And we have a great town staff right now. You know, the town manager and the select board are really supportive and give me a lot of room to move, which in years past, I don't think was the case. So I don't take any of that for granted. There's a whole lot of folks making this what it is. And so I'm glad that people are excited and paying attention, because I think they should, because it's just it's a great resource. And I think we're doing a pretty good job of offering good programming and trying to welcome people in. So on that note, motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Thank you. So before we go, I just want to make sure that we're all agreed. So January 28th, and I'll send this out, but that'll be our next meeting. And if you have any brain space, think about some ideas for 2021.
Oh, yes.
And let your imagination really run around a bit.
That's why I was asking you where you look, because I had no idea what to say to Google to find ideas for the Camden Opera House in 2021.
Yeah. Well, I would start with, what do you like?
Yeah.
Or what do your friends like? Or what do you know?
Yeah.
What do you miss? What do you want to see?
Well, we have a Beatles tribute show,
Is that going to happen?
July. A Day in the Life, Morgan Cates,
That was
local
the first
boy makes
show I ever
good.
came to here.
Yeah, it's going to be back, and it's going to be great.
Happy holidays, everyone.
It's a split.
Think about it.